So I was trapped in Orscheln. I couldn't get out. And I'm going to get into more of that a bit, but while I was in there, it required that I talk to people. And it really got me to thinking about today's video. And of course, I'm going to tie all this together at the end, so just hang in there with me. Most people will call me crazy. Most people do call me crazy. So I live off-grid because I'm an introvert. Oh, introverts are terrible. Go see a psychiatrist. But the truth of the matter is, if you really do any research on it, introverts make up about 50% of the population. Now, some people are going to say, oh, you can't be an introvert, you're on YouTube. Well, no, I'm not talking to 80,000 people, I'm talking to a camera. John Stossel, big media guy, you may have seen him a long time ago on TV. I don't know if he's on TV anymore, but he is an introvert. So yes, you can be on camera and be an introvert. We don't like to socialize. It's just not important to us. Psychiatrists will say that's bad, and they will try to encourage you to be social. Now, there are people who will say that introverts are bad because in order for human development, you have to be able to communicate ideas. Well, it seems to me I am communicating ideas, and if I need ideas back, I can look at other YouTube videos, or I can go to the library and get a book. Ideas don't have to be one-on-one conversations. So if we think about early primitive people, people will say, oh, they always went into a group. That's how it has to be in order to survive. I have no idea if that's true. Were there anybody out there who was independent? I mean, obviously if there's introverts now, there were introverts then. Being an introvert, I can still go get a job. I can communicate my experiences and my abilities at my job. I can learn at my job, and then I can go home and be an introvert. I don't need to socialize, and that's the key. Socializing doesn't do anything. It doesn't communicate ideas. It doesn't make you learn anything. It's just banter back and forth, useless conversation. I always looked at conversation a little bit different than most people do. I look at it as communicating ideas. People will say, you got to have friends. You are social animals. We have to be friends. And I don't have any friends. I have no friends other than Carolyn. Carolyn is my best friend. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I've been married several times in my life, and I regret that none of them worked out. But this one works. We don't argue. We don't fight, ever. Ever. She has her responsibilities in life. I have my responsibilities in life. But honestly, we don't communicate too terribly much. Pretty quiet most of the day. I mean, there are times where we get talky, but the rest of the time, not so much. And this is kind of the point of living off-grid. When I was a nomad, as you know, I traveled the country for several years with Carolyn. And you would think, going out to the national forest, that everybody would want to be left alone. As a matter of fact, most people you talk to would say, I came out here to get away from it all. And so you would go to a campground, and there would be somebody else over there in the distance. You get set up, and they become running over to be talking to you, and they want to invite you over for dinner, and you know, let's have a beer and let's socialize, let's be friends. And you'll say, oh, so why do you travel? Oh, to get away from people. Okay, you're getting away from people, yet you're talking. Why? And what is the point of the conversation? In my mind, it's just thumping of the chest. And this is what I see a lot. You'll see two people having a conversation. I don't do well in conversations. I'm very bad at small talk. So it's hard for me to even compare something I've had a conversation about in a long time. But you'll see two people talking and one person, yeah, I just got myself a fence to put up. Oh, that's great, man. Yeah, I just bought a new truck. Really? Yeah, that's great. What kind of truck is it? Oh, it's an F-150. No, that's nothing. I've got a diesel monster truck built specialty. And oh, really? Wow, that's cool. I got married to a new wife. She's 24 years old. Really? Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, that's nothing, man. I married an 18-year-old. And they're just constantly trying to outdo each other, thumping their chest. And what it is narcissism. They have to be better. They have to be smarter. They have to tell you that you're nothing. And so, you know, they're friends and they're shaking hands. Hey, John, how you doing? Oh, great, Joe. It's great to see you. And then when they get home, the first thing they do is, you know what John did? He went out there and got a fence, and then he hooked up with a 24-year-old, and he thinks he's so great and rich, and oh, he got a new truck. They're complaining. And I know this happens. I had what I would consider a real friend when I was in the Navy. I was on a submarine. He was on the same crew as me. We hung out all the time. My wife and I would go over to his wife's and his house, and they would come over to our house. As a matter of fact, my wife and his wife, when we were out to sea, went out and got a dog. Now, I asked my wife to name the dog Chase. I always wanted a golden retriever named Chase. Well, she went out and got the dog with my friend's wife. My friend's wife got a brother of my dog. So mine was a female, hers was a male. She, the wife of my friend, named it Jake. And so instead of my wife naming it Chase, she named it Blake. Female dog named Blake. So that's how close we were. Everything, we did everything together. Well, when we were underway, we told each other things that were bothering us, and we hoped that the wives were behaving themselves, all the stresses of Navy men. I told my friend a concern I was having. I would have trusted him with my life. Well, later I was walking through the machinery room. I was an egg ganger. One of the other egg gangers said, "Hey!" And he relayed this personal information, making fun of me. Because it was embarrassing what I'd said. But I would say it to my friend, but I wouldn't say it to anybody else. And so at that point, I learned that you can't trust anyone, ever. And all through my life, I've rediscovered that. Anytime I meet someone, at some point in the relationship, they will break the trust that you have for them. And so I don't know if it's just me, where people will just break the trust that I have for them, or is it everybody? And I think it's everybody. I think everybody experiences this. These people need a relationship with somebody else, so they'll ignore the break in trust. Oh, I'll forgive that. No big deal. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that was funny. Embarrassing. But I won't. Carolyn obviously has social anxiety, so for her, it is actually mental anguish, mental pain to be around somebody. Because you're always, in her point of view, and it's a valid point of view, you're always having to prove yourself to people because they're always judging you. The minute you meet them, they're judging you. Well, your hair's messed up. You should dress a little nicer. Oh, what about those clothes? And oh, that's terrible that you live in a tiny house. They're always judging. I remember when I was married to my last wife, her sister was a doctor. Her sister's husband was an engineer. Well, I ran my own business. We had this old clunky car, just trying to get the business to build. We went over to visit. You could just see the disgust in their face that we had to come over to their rich neighborhood and their friends were out there probably looking at our old junky car. Now, I do remember that they came down and visited us one time. Now, of course, our house is 100 years old and we're remodeling it. It was a fixer-upper. And I didn't see the disgust in their face this time like I did when we were at their house. And I know why. Because they were away from their friends. Their friends weren't judging them. As a matter of fact, when they came in the house, they were quite relaxed. They had the same sweat clothes on that we had, and jeans and a t-shirt. They weren't all fancied up. It's almost like they dressed down to come visit us, and they were being judged by the people they socialized with, the people that they called friends, that their sister, their little sister, so beneath anything that they were. There is a distinct difference that I'm trying to make. There is a professional interaction that I think all of us have to have. Even in caveman days, a group of people, a hunting party got together, they planned out their hunt, so they communicated how they were going to go about hunting, and then they would go out and hunt. But when they got home, maybe after they got done butchering, and the day was over, after their hours, whatever their hours were back then, the day was over, they went back to their family, and they didn't have to socialize. So there's two things I'm talking about. The professional aspect of trying to improve human society, and then there's the personal, the socialization that I don't think is important, that so many people seem to think that is vital that you have. But what do you gain out of it? Usually there's a lot of drama involved. Usually there's alcohol involved. You always have to go party, and I'm just not into the partying thing. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to think that I'm crazy, and that's fine that I'm crazy. The problem I have with folks who think I'm crazy is, who am I hurting? I'm not hurting anybody. I want to be left alone. Now, there are people who will tell me that they want to come and visit with me and socialize with me. They want to take me out to dinner. I don't need that interaction. I'm happy trying to provide information that I've learned on how to live off grid. And I know it's not a very popular thing, and there are a lot of people who like to do it, but not everybody's doing it. So if I can provide information to you through a YouTube video, then we've accomplished our task. But as far as communication, that defeats the whole purpose of what we're trying to do. I know when we first moved on the property, it seemed like people were coming over all the time. And the thing about them coming over all the time was they always wanted to give their opinion on how to do things. When I was building a tiny house, it was a big deal. I just started it. I hadn't got a no trespassing sign or anything yet. And everybody was coming over, welcoming us in the neighborhood. And people would, well, here's what you got to do. You got to do it this way, that way, and then this way. I've never asked anybody for advice on how to build it in this neighborhood. I did ask my dad because he built houses before. I trusted his opinion. And the thing about my dad, this is probably where I learned this from, is if I say, hey Dad, how do you build trusses? He would say, well, I don't know, maybe you should look it up on YouTube. Dad, I know I'm asking you for your opinion and you don't like to give opinions, but I understand. Just let me know how you do it and I won't hold it against you if I mess it up. But when people come in and they tell you, this is what you got to do, and okay, fine. They'll tell you how to do it. You listen to them, and then you just ignore the advice. Because people always say, well, you can always ignore the advice. And then they come back over and they say, oh, I thought you were going to do it this way. So now they're gaslighting you. They are literally lying to you. Gaslighting is trying to make you feel crazy. It's a sign of narcissism, actually. It's actually based off a movie, Gaslight. The guy living in the house would turn down the lights, the gas light, to make the woman feel crazy, like the lights were going out or something. I've never watched the movie. So it's a manipulation game. So these people that you're supposed to trust, these people who are giving you advice, and now you have to trust that they're giving you good advice, are manipulating you, tricking you, making you feel crazy like, wait, I never said I was going to do that. Why did he say? I thought you said you were going to do that. It was a lie. So to the story about Orschelns, we're at Orscheln's to get some chicken food with sunflower seeds because we didn't grow any last year for the chickens, and we checked out and we're heading out the exit door. And two guys were standing there just yapping up a storm. And they're completely ignoring the fact there are people behind you. Of course, you say, excuse me, and they don't hear you. Now, like I said, manipulation. I'm sure they heard me, but they weren't interested in interrupting their conversation. And they were talking about a fence. I just built me a fence. Like, I don't care. You could get out of the doorway and talk about it, but they didn't want to go outside and talk about it because it was cold. So, inconvenienced me for their socialization. That was useless conversation. It wasn't necessary. I think people are manipulative in general. And so I just don't hang around with them. So if you'll click this up next video, it'll take you to a video where I was talking about being scared. So if I can inspire you to find peace so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.